I've spliced 120 volts straight onto a ground rod. Why would I do that? So in a minute, I'm going to turn power onto that black wire and send 120 volts straight into that ground rod. Why would I do that? It's all part of a demonstration to disprove two of the biggest misconceptions about electricity. One, that electricity flows to ground, and two, the electricity takes the path of least resistance. It doesn't flow to ground, and it doesn't take the path of least resistance, it takes all paths. So what I'm saying is, I'm not talking about lightning and static and natural electricity. I'm talking about the utility transformer supplying power to your house. Every amp that comes off that transformer must find its way back to that transformer. None of it can go into the earth and the dirt and just dissipate. It has to find its way back to that transformer. And it will take all paths to get there, including using the earth as a conductor to get back there. So here's the extension cord that's live, and here's the other end of that white extension cord. The thing to remember, those ground rods are not tied into a panel anywhere. They're two independent ground rods driven into the ground and tied together, and I put power to them. So what will happen if I put power to the ground rods? Nothing? Almost nothing. So I'm going to use these 2 amp probes to show you what almost nothing looks like. Just what we got to remember is I'm an electrician. These are just 2 basic amp probes. So we're going to talk about tenths of an amp. These will display to hundredths of an amp, but we're just going to do readings and only really pay attention to tenths of an amp with these meters. So we got electricity going straight into the ground rod, and we get 6/10 of an amp going straight into the ground rod. So if electricity doesn't flow to ground, where are those 6/10 of an amp going? I'm saying those 6/10 of an amp are using all paths available to it to work its way back to that transformer out there on the pole. And I can use my amp probe on all the grounds and different parts of the circuit to show that all 6/10 of an amps are accounted for on their way back to that transformer. So yes, electricity will take all paths, but the paths of less resistance will get more of the amperage. So those 6/10 of an amp, most of them are going to track across the ground and hook up to everything going on with the pool. All the equipment grounds, the bonding and all that stuff. And then they're going to get onto the equipment grounds and track that back into the main panel where they're bonded to the neutral, and they'll jump over to the neutral and use the neutral to go back to the transformer. But some of it, a very small amount of it, will track all the way, this whole way, across the ground and up into the transformer. So here's the front of my house. That's the main disconnect. And now we're that much closer to the transformer. All right, now let's get the amp probes out. All right, so I've killed power to everything in the house except for that one ground rod. So right now on this leg, we got the 6/10 going out all the way to the pool. And then it's going out, hitting the pool house, hitting all the grounds, hitting everything else, getting all my equipment grounds. And boom, we have 4.8 on the equipment grounds. Then it goes up through the meter and comes back down, and this is a neutral back to the pole. So we have accounted for 4.8 of the 0.6. So let's go find the other 1.2. So now we're out at the pole, and I'm not a utility guy, but that stake that is the guy wire, if you notice, not only does it support the pole, that top one goes and ties into the transformer. So that last 1.2 amps or 0.12 amps is tracking all the way from there, coming across, hitting there, and riding up there to complete the circuit back to the transformer. So if we throw an amp probe on this, and 1.4, or 0.14, there you go. All 0.6 accounted for. That was probably one of the hardest videos I've ever made. When I originally thought this up in my head, I thought if I drove the ground rods out at the pool house, disconnected the ground feeding a sub panel at the pool house, that I'd get no flow. I'd get no amperage going to the ground rods because there'd be too much resistance 400 feet from the telephone pole. But no matter what I did, I was getting amperage flow. The electricity was taking all paths and getting back there. So instead I came up with what I thought was maybe a better video, where we had the 0.6 amps taking all paths, and we were able to amp probe the different paths back and account for all 0.16. All made it back to the transformer, not into the earth. But that was a pain in the ass. Thank you very much. Just realized as I'm finishing the video, I never showed both ground rods, but I'm not redoing the whole video. But I'll show you. There's one ground rod. Number 6 goes over to this ground rod. And then the number 6 is just laying on the ground there, not tied into anything.